Welcome, everybody. It's Friggen Good Politics. Greg and Derek here. We are in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada.
Oh, yeah. Canada Strong and Free Networking Conference.
The Canada Strong and Free Networking Conference 2025. We are excited to be here. And we are here with a gentleman, Michael Wescott.
Hello. Yeah.
He worked in the Harper government. He worked at Queen's Park for a time. Queen's Park is the Ontario government, for those who don't know. Mm-hmm. And you've done a ton of advocacy and work in that, consulting. And you work for
politics campaigns.
Now you run Allies for a Strong Canada.
Yes, I do.
Which we do for all, full disclosure. We help them a little bit with some comms and graphics.
Look at their nice pins here.
Yeah, look at these pins.
Where do I get a pin?
We'll get you up here. You can have my pen.
No, okay. No, there's some right over here. I'm getting one. I'm doing this
out of
live on the
camera.
podcast.
We're doing it live.
We're doing it. Do it live.
Friggen, get the pin and we'll do it live.
Friggen rights. Let's go. I literally just saw Michael's pin stash and I stole one. I didn't even ask.
If you too would like a pin, visit theallies.ca and sign up. We will send you a pin.
They will, yeah.
Will you?
Sure.
Oh, okay.
Why not?
Excellent. Okay, that's very good.
I got all these pins now.
Michael, tell us, what is Allies for a Strong Canada?
Allies for a Strong Canada is a movement of Canadians from all across the country, from across the political spectrum, from across the vocational spectrum, from across the demographic spectrum, who are coming together to stand up for our shared values and stand up against the hatred that's been facing our friends in the Jewish community. So ever since October 7th of 2023 and that terrible attack by Hamas on Israel, literally the day after, we saw this unbelievable wave of hatred spring up in Canada. And I'm sure everybody that's listening to this podcast, I know you guys have both seen it, but we have seen these protests that have happened through the streets. We have seen okay, we're still good. Yeah. We have seen, we've seen people standing up and chanting things like "Death to Canada" and burning Canadian flags, and we've seen our friends in the Jewish community facing things like arson and vandalism and shootings at school. Like people on multiple occasions have literally shot at schools for Jewish children. So Canadians have simply said enough is enough. And so we created Allies for a Strong Canada as a place where people who see what's going on, who are not Jewish, who say, look, I'm not Jewish, but I see what's happening. This is un-Canadian. I hate it. I think it's disgusting. And I want to do something about it. So we created Allies for a Strong Canada to help bring together and galvanize and mobilize those people who want to stand up in the face of this hatred.
Well, good for you guys. It's honestly a great organization. I mean, where I am, I live in small town Ontario, so you don't see honestly too much of it other than like one single piece of graffiti in town. But if you go into London, you go to Toronto, you go to Ottawa here, you go to any big city across Canada, you're going to see that those violent lawlessness or lawless protests going on. And it's very frustrating to see the lack of action from the federal government, other appointed individuals, just sort of letting it happen, not doing anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, really frustrating for Canadians when, we see a major street being blocked with what was clearly an illegal protest with people who are waving flags for the enemies of Canada, the declared enemies of Canada, and organizations that Canada has very clearly said, like, this is a terrorist entity. You can't support this organization in Canada. But there they are, waving the flags, doing their little terrorist cosplay.
Yeah.
It's disgusting and it's offensive, and Canadians don't want to see this anymore. And so it is incumbent upon our elected and institutional leaders. We talk about institutional leaders. We talk about what's been happening on our college and university campuses, where you see these violent protesters who are doing things like, circling schools and preventing Jewish students from coming and going, or, tracking people down and demanding that they account for whether or not they're Jewish or whether or not they're Zionists.
Jeez.
It's horrible. It's horrific.
Yeah, it's horrific.
It's like pick literally any other group of people, Christians, First Nations, Black Canadians, pick any other group. Would we allow it to go on that way? Would that group allow themselves to be harassed and intimidated like that?
The thing I find interesting, you can talk about this, Michael, is the Jewish community is a relatively small percentage of the population.
It's like 1% of the population.
Yeah, I was just talking to the gentleman on your board. Like, what is the Jewish population of Canada? Is it 1 million people? I have no idea.
I believe it's about 400,000 people.
Okay, so it's a very small minority.
And not entirely, but in the most part, fairly geographically concentrated.
Yes.
With the two largest populations being in in sort of Toronto and north of Toronto,
Right.
and in Montreal.
Yeah.
And then there are smaller communities in places like Vancouver and Edmonton and Calgary and London and Windsor and so on and so forth.
Okay.
Yeah. What I just find interesting is such a small percentage of the population, yet they receive
Yeah.
All the hate.
all the hate.
An outsized amount of
All
hatred,
the hate.
yeah.
Well, and
Yeah.
you know, it's. I'm glad you bring it up because I was talking with a colleague of mine the other day, who, like me, also not Jewish, who's from the Ukrainian community, and who since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, has been helping to organize protests and things like that. And she said, you know, the crazy thing is, when the Jewish people come together to rally, these anti-Semites show up and counter protest, and everybody goes, oh well, you know. And what she said to me was, you know, if I organized a rally in support of Ukraine, if people showed up to counter protest that, they'd be immediately attacked and reviled. You know, the police would shut it down. Like there'd be no moral equivalency. There'd be no question about it. But when it happens to the Jews, well, it's just okay.
Yeah,
and it's awful.
Yeah,
it's a crazy phenomenon that's been going on for way too long, and so it makes total sense why you have felt the need for your organization to exist and start pushing back.
Yeah, and I have to say, I have been unbelievably happy with the success so far. Like, we have had literally thousands of Canadians from all across the country, from all different walks of life, from young people all the way up to senior citizens who've joined the organization and said, I see what's happening and I hate it, but I don't know what to do. We say, great, we'll help. That's what we're for. We'll get you involved.
Speaking of that, so we've sort of talked about the high level cultural issue. Let's get down to brass tacks. How do you, because that's what we do on Friggen Good Politics. We talk about the play behind, or the strategy behind the play.
100%.
How the hell do you start an advocacy organization in Canada? What does that even look like?
Well, it's, you know, that's a great question. I mean, I think for me, it always comes down to make it real, make it local, and make it easy. People are busy. People are so busy. And it's not that they don't care. It's that you just need to figure out how to fit it into their lives. And they have to, you know, you have to have an emotional argument that touches them in one part of their brain. You have to have a rational argument that touches them in another part of their brain. But you just have to make it easy for them. You have to say, how can I give you an outlet for how you feel and what you think that you can execute on, ideally in under a minute, and from like your phone as you're scrolling through Instagram before you go to sleep or something, right? Like, and it's not about what we used to use the term slacktivism. It is about, that's the first step, right?
Yes,
that's how you get people engaged. You know, they see something, they see a video, they see, you know, an op-ed or a tweet or something, right? They see something, it takes root in their brain, and you make it really, really easy for them in that moment to do something. It's small and it's quick. It takes nothing. But then they're in, and then you go back to them, and you go back to them again and again. And look, there are going to be people who will do everything that you ask them to do, and those people are worth their weight in gold. Treasure those people. Those
amazing
are your
people.
super activists. And then there are going to be people who, you know, they'll if you send an email once a week or whatever, they'll get the email, they'll read the email, they'll, you know, sometimes they'll interact with it, sometimes they'll click on the link and do the thing, sometimes they won't, and that's okay. But then a thing will happen, right? Unfortunately, it's usually a bad thing that will happen, but a thing will happen.
Right.
And then they'll get motivated and they'll get involved, and that's why it's really important to have that group. And then look, you're always going to have a group of people who are just going to be the looky-loos, right? They'll come and they'll get the stuff, and you'll always want them to engage, but, you know, maybe something really big will happen, and then a few of them will come over, and you'll get them for like 10 minutes while the issue's hot, and that's okay. Like, stratification is the key. Having lots of things for people to do, having lots of different kinds of things for people to do, and then being really, really, really diligent about staying on top of who's doing what, and making sure that for those, you know, that beautiful 10% of people who just want to do everything, who are super engaged, you're constantly giving them more stuff to do, and you're asking them for their advice. You're saying, like, okay, you know, you clearly very passionate about this. What do you think that we should be doing? What are you seeing? And asking them to take on greater roles. There is a thing that I have watched throughout my political career and throughout my professional career in Canada, which is this decline of voluntarism. We believe that there is this issue with people not signing up for stuff. And I actually think that part of the problem is we stopped asking.
Yeah.
You know, we've run this little experiment just in this project that we're doing right now, where we said, is there, are there people out there that would help us, that would give us a little bit of their time? I am shocked at how many people have signed up to help us out.
Yeah.
Right. 10,000 in a year.
Yeah, it is unbelievable. A year, weeks.
Yeah.
Weeks. It has been amazing just how many people have signed up. But it is really important that you're just constantly feeding that advocacy base, saying, look, I want to, and giving people lots of different ways to interact with you. I'll give a podcast, a great way to interact. In-person events, virtual events, engaging with them by email, creating other opportunities for them to engage, asking them to share your social content. But all of these things together, that ecosystem that you create, that is how you build that activism and ultimately that advocacy coalition. Yeah.
I just want to look at the components of what you did here. So you came up with an idea and you found a gap. So the gap was there's not a lot of non-Jewish voices supporting the Jewish community. And anti-Semitism was massively out of control. It still is. And so this was a gap. So you found a gap, and then you said, okay, let's start an organization. And so I'm guessing this was a federal nonprofit that you started, something like that. So I'm like, these are just the nuts and bolts that I think are important for people to understand.
Costs you $200 to create it. It's not very expensive.
Yeah, like there's online tools you can use nowadays to do the legal work for you and whatnot. It doesn't take too long. So that's good. You had to start a bank account. Yeah. You had to raise some money.
A little bit, yeah.
So you have to have some money. Sometimes you can do it without any money. Sometimes you need a lot of money. It depends. But having some money is helpful if you can get some of that. So you have to know some people that are passionate. Go to them and say, this is my plan. This is what I want to do. Here's the gap that I'm fulfilling. And then you go out and start doing the work.
Let me touch on the money thing for a bit. Because
Please.
I will tell you, as somebody who has...
We all want money.
We all want money.
Helpful.
Yeah.
And the people that are prepared to put money into this stuff, what they are looking for is a plan.
Right.
Yeah. So you don't go and say, hey, I'm starting a thing, give me money. You say, hey, I'm starting a thing. Here's what success looks like.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm basically selling you a product, right?
Yeah.
I think that we can achieve X, Y, and Z in this period of time. And here are the milestones. And I would like you to essentially invest in this idea. But, show them a budget. Say, here's what I think it's going to cost in the first year. And be detailed. And answer their questions. Because the more they feel like you have invested the time to actually think critically about the plan, that you have an understanding of what success looks like, that you believe personally in it, and you can break that, that year-long plan down into some bite-sized chunks, whether they're quarterly metrics or monthly metrics or whatever it is. But when you go and you ask for that money, be really clear in your proposal and say, I'm looking for your money because I want to achieve this end. I believe that this is something you care about. And I will treat your investment as if it was my own. And I will be respectful of it, and I will be careful with it. And this is what we're going to do with that.
Yeah, and as a pro tip for anyone running any kind of nonprofit charity, never try to sell people on simply operations. You have to sell them on a product within your operation.
A result.
Like whether I do work for a private school in my area, you don't go to people and say, help us keep the lights on. Like no one wants to keep the lights on, but say teacher salaries or a new furnace or whatever it might be. People
something
will give
specific
money. Yeah,
helps.
people will absolutely go all in on something specific.
The thing I want to touch on, and Michael, you can comment on this too, is I think people have money and they want to give it to causes that they care about. Not everyone has money. There's sort of a thing going on, everybody's broke. Yes, that's true. But there's also a lot of people with money that want to have an influence. Yeah. But they need somebody and a plan in order to make that happen. And the other thing that I think is really interesting is that people aren't just buying your plan, they're buying you. They're buying Michael Wescott. And I think that's why people have invested in this organization, because they're like, Michael's a trustworthy person that's been around a lot, he knows a lot, and he has a great plan. So can you talk about that, about how you see donors coming and any other kind of pro tips to get more donors?
Yeah, look, I think first and foremost, you have to understand that you have to be the biggest and most passionate advocate for what you're doing. Right. People have to feel inspired by you, right? Totally. And this kind of goes to, I think, your point as well about operations. They have to understand what the dream is. They have to share the dream with you. Yeah. And to do that, you have to invite them in, and they have to feel your passion, and they have to feel your energy, and they have to feel that sort of balance between, I'm a competent manager who's going to take this seriously, who understands how to execute and deliver, but at the same time, I have a dream, and I have a goal, and I have a vision, and I want you to come be part of that. Right. And
inviting them in.
Exactly. Yeah. And sometimes I find when you're starting to have those conversations, ask them for more than just money. Say I would like an investment.
You're more than a checkbook.
I need your time.
Yeah.
I need your brain. I need your advice. I need your network. right?
People like that.
Ask people for help, because the more you treat them the way that you want to be treated as a professional, and as a serious person, an intelligent person, and less like an ATM, the more the more
Don't treat your donors like an ATM.
Yeah,
Great tip.
pro tip. Yeah,
it is about recognizing that if they have the capacity to write a check, they also have the capacity to pick up the phone.
Right.
They also have the capacity to sit with you and brainstorm. And the more you can involve them in that process, the more buy-in they're going to feel. The more they're going to feel like they're investing in something that they really have a stake in.
Right.
it's like if you're building a hockey team, you've got to give everybody. Not everybody can be the forward.
Yeah.
You got to have your right winger, your left winger, your D, your goalie. Like you've got to create a team. And so you have to figure out what everyone's strengths and weaknesses are, and inviting them in to tell you what their strengths and weaknesses are.
And, if I could build on that as well, the concept of team is really incredibly important in this. It is what galvanizes us. I always wear my pin as an example, right? Like,
I got my pin now.
We all got the pin.
You saw that live?
The brand and the idea behind the brand and the values that the brand speaks to are really, really critical to that success, right?
Yeah.
You will only have, you will only, I talk about that vision and that dream. The way that you help a large group of people to share that is by creating, these institutional links between people.
Totally.
And it's something that brings them together. We called the organization Allies for a Strong Canada because we really wanted to speak to the core values of the organization, which was the values that make Canada strong, prosperous, and free, and the importance of working together to protect and enhance and define those values.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, I just find this fascinating when you're trying to convince people to get involved and do something interesting with you. How do you, if you've gone along for a little while, the initial vision is still there, but how do you report on progress? How do you keep people excited? How do you keep them engaged? Do you have any tips or thoughts on that for people trying to get active?
It's boring, but talking to people a lot and consistently, all right. A regular email that looks the same, that has new content that people get used to and they interact with on a regular basis. It doesn't have to be very long. In fact, shorter is better.
It is.
Yeah. Because people, again, be respectful of people's time. People are busy. But just, regular social media content, regular engagement, demonstrating to them that you're in this for the long haul because you're setting up things that you're going to keep going and keep doing and keep coming back to. And just, this is going to be a little bit weird, but like I remember in the early part of my career meeting a very successful author. And at that point I was very heavily involved in communications, and just saying like, what does it take to be successful in your field? And it's like, wake up every morning and have a plan to sit down and write and
grind every day
and just grind every day. And that's how you have to approach it, because it's not going to be the first email you send or the 10th or the 50th. But, by the time you're cranking that content out regularly, and, I'll share an example. I have not done a lot of video content, for want of a better word, in my life.
We're forcing you to right now.
Yeah.
I apologize to your viewers because I know it's painful.
No,
but
you're good.
I remember, and I was working with you guys on this. The first video I ever made, for what ended up being about a 35-second video, I think it took me almost 2 hours. I think I did about 100 takes on my phone. It was really painful.
Don't feel bad.
It was really
people
difficult
when you're doing this.
The final draft was good.
Yeah, and I thankfully I had some really awesome people to help polish it and make it work. But it's not easy.
No.
But if you keep at it and you just keep building the muscle, all of this stuff gets easier, and you just got to stick with it.
Keep
and
going.
Wake up every day and know what the 3 things you're going to do that day that are going to help you achieve your goal for the day. And if you achieve all your goals for the day, you'll achieve your goal for the week. And if you achieve all your goals for the week, you can achieve all your goals for the month, and on and on and on, right? Like, just have a really clear picture of what success looks like in your mind. Hold on to that picture and be constantly working towards it.
Yeah.
I have to ask a crazy question about being crazy. So in politics, we often say you got to be crazy to be in politics. This is a wild field. To be an advocate for something like you're doing, do you have to be a little, couple screws? Because I think, Greg and I would probably admit we got a couple screws loose to do all the
Yeah.
advocacy
Oh,
and
yeah.
different work that we do.
Well, look.
What do you feel?
Okay, so here's the thing. By virtue of the fact that the three of us are sitting here having a conversation about politics, we are not
We're not
normal.
Yeah.
We are
We're very
weird.
abnormal.
Sorry.
Most people
We're weird, everyone.
Yeah.
do not think about politics very often, if ever.
Yeah.
And honestly, I actually think that is to the detriment of our country because
is.
Yes, it is, actually.
we
One of the reasons why we're doing this podcast.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
People more interested in politics.
Exactly. We lament the fact that participation is going down, but you're absolutely right. To care about this stuff as much as we do, to invest as much of our lives in it as we do, yeah, you have to accept that you're not going to be like most people, and that's okay, because what you discover in life is everybody's passionate about something, and we're just really lucky that we figured out what we're passionate about.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah,
can
that's a
just
good point.
spend our time focusing on this thing that drives us and sustains us
Yeah.
and makes us feel good and inspires
Gives us energy.
Yeah,
Yep.
it just gets us out of bed in the morning.
Yeah.
You want to talk about what's weird about me and a little bit crazy?
Yes.
It's that I feel that in the morning. It's that I'm like,
You're like, all right, let's
okay,
go.
Let's
Yeah.
do this. What are we going to do today? What
Friggen writes, let's
insane
go.
thing am I going to read, on the internet or in a news story, or what crazy video am I going to see? And how are we going to say, okay, like, yeah, things look dark and there is evil in this world.
Yep.
And we have to point at it and we have to name it. But you know what? There's an awful lot of good. And how are we going to connect those good people together to fight back against that evil?
Right.
Speaking of that, how, and in specifically like the activist world that you live in now, how do you deal with those bad days? Like, how do you, there's terrible news. You've now got to reach out to your audience and motivate them about bad news that maybe you, or depressing maybe is the better
look,
word.
there
Like,
Just
just,
to take a lot of negative stuff.
Yeah.
It is
Especially
hard.
in this anti-Semitism world where we live in right now.
yeah.
Look, one of the things I say about my organization is I'm not in the persuasion business. I'm in the mobilization business, right?
Okay.
What does that
All
mean?
right.
I don't spend my time convincing people that anti-Semitism is bad and Israel is good. I focus on the people that already know those things. And so on those really
good tip.
dark days
Good
when
tip.
there's bad stuff happening, I'm focused on the people who want to do something about it.
Yeah.
Right.
And that really lifts me up, right?
Right.
Because I know that
you're
I'm
finding
speaking
allies.
to- yes,
Yeah.
exactly. I'm speaking to an alliance of people across the country who are on the right side of history on this stuff, who also want to do something about it. And so on those really tough days, my first thought, like when that girls' school got shot up, my first thought was, oh man, we really need to show our friends in the Jewish community that they're not alone right now.
Yeah.
Right.
And when back in October, when we had the anniversary of the October 7th attack, when we had those hundreds of people recording videos, just to tell our friends in the Jewish community, hey, you're not alone.
Yeah.
This is a dark time and it's really, really hard, but you're not alone.
Yeah. And I know that was huge for people too.
Yeah.
Just having that. What do you feel about the current state of anti-Semitism? How long has it been since October? Was that last year?
It was
2 years?
2023. We're sneaking up on the second anniversary.
I can't believe it's been almost 2 years for that.
Yeah.
But I've seen so many videos. Do you think most Canadians are seeing the hate that's out there, the students that are not even allowed to go into their classrooms because they have Hamas supporters blocking them, the Jewish businesses that are being vandalized, the people in their neighborhoods? I heard a story the other day of parents that they hire security guards to take their kids to school.
Yeah.
This is wild. This is happening in Canada, but are Canadians really seeing this? Can you talk about that a little bit?
So I think that we have some challenges with how the legacy media talks about and portrays this stuff, but I think the power of social media means that the message gets out regardless. And the fact that so many Canadians now, they still get information from legacy media, but they have other sources, means that they're not that they're not strictly stuck to that channel. But I want to go back to your larger question, which is, are Canadians aware of what's going on? I would say broadly yes. And I would say regardless of the rhetoric or the pandering or whatever they hear from elected or institutional leaders or from legacy media, they know the difference between right and wrong. And when they see somebody marching down the street, waving the flag of a terrorist entity, dressed up like a terrorist themselves, screaming hate and invective, they know what that is. And instinctively they go, that's not okay. And what they lack is just the ability to do something about it. And that's where I think we can really play a really important role. But you're right. There are lots of people in this country that don't know what's going on.
Right.
And that is the power of how we are able to help, which is to shine a light on what's happening and say, if you think that this is bad, if you think that this is not appropriate in our country and shouldn't be allowed to happen, there's something you can do about it. Your voice has power, and I bet you. And if you're thinking,
it really does. People shouldn't forget that.
No, absolutely. Well, it is. Look, your elected official cares more about one thing than anything else, and that's getting reelected.
They sure do.
There's this story that I tell about a finance minister who shall go nameless for a moment, who was about to unveil a very important budget, and instead walked into his office on the Monday. So budgets are in federal budgets are delivered on Thursdays in Canada. On Monday morning, walked in and said, "We're not talking about the budget right now. We're going to talk about this other issue because 3 people came up to me in the grocery store and talked to me about this issue on the weekend."
Wow.
And so this is now job one. 3 people pushed that finance minister off of what would have otherwise been the most important issue, and that's how this stuff works. I think the thing that would absolutely floor most Canadians is knowing just how little engagement it takes to actually get an elected official to move on an issue and to engage on it, right? Like it's, people say to me like, "Oh, well, like we have to have 50 or 60% of people engaged." No, we don't.
No.
We need dozens.
3 people.
Dozens,
in a grocery
store.
The frozen food section.
On a Sunday.
Well, that's what Brad, when we talked to Brad Wall on our first episode,
Yeah.
and that's what he said. He would go home,
Yeah.
and the people that came up to him in the grocery store
And Safeway.
would say
Safeway and Swift Current.
Exactly.
and they would tell him the things that they cared about.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. That is what they pay attention to. And in an earlier part of my career in attempting to explain this, I actually created like a little hierarchy that I'll share with you guys at some point.
Yeah.
But like there are lots of things that go into the mix when influencing an elected official's opinion or view on a particular issue, right? And certainly ideology plays into it.
Oh yeah.
Media narrative plays into it. Public polling plays into it. But what dominates all of it is the opinions of the people that elect them.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So if you can bypass all of that and go directly to the source and then get those people engaged with their local members, that's going to have a greater impact than almost anything else.
And it's the same across the political spectrum. It doesn't matter what party.
It is true. It is true across the political spectrum. It is true in every country that has free elections.
Yeah.
Everywhere in the world that you go, and I have done these kinds of things in other parts of the world. I can tell you, this matters more and this impacts more than literally anything else you can do.
Interesting.
It's hard.
It's
hard.
It takes work.
And it either takes a lot of work or a lot of money, and sometimes both. And look, I have done this stuff on some pretty esoteric issues.
Yeah.
But you can always find a constituency. And it's just about understanding how to harness and galvanize and understand who your activists are and understand what they're passionate about.
Yeah. And understanding like where the niche is. Like it's one thing to just start up a think tank that agrees that you like the idea of that maybe a lot of people agree with, but is there actually a niche for that? Because I think you guys found a particular niche where it was non-Jewish Canadians who already agree who need to be mobilized. Like that's a niche that you found that was
there was a hole.
unserved, and you went there. Yep. You didn't just come up with a think tank to come up with some ideas that everyone just kind of generally agrees with, but there's no movement on that. So that's another key part. You have to, it's one thing to be, if you can't be first on an issue, be first within something else on that issue.
Correct. Yeah.
I want to go on a different topic here. I'm just curious if Canadians and just generally Western democracies are just numb to chaos and panic and stress right now. And I say that because we just went through COVID.
Yeah.
Everything was changing all the time, massive disruptions of everything. And then we saw October 7th. And now we have Trump that got elected. We have tariffs. We have chaos happening. And I think when people see
Ukraine, Russia,
Russia,
all this stuff, Israel,
China.
Hamas, China.
Good Trump impression. But for me, it's kind of like how I feel about my Toronto Maple Leafs. It's just about playoff time.
Yeah.
We're first in the Atlantic. We got 100 points.
It's their year. This is their year.
No, but here's the thing. I'm so numb that I can't hope for them.
Yeah.
It's a huge problem. I want to hope, but I know they're probably gonna
Unlike
break my heart.
the Toronto Maple Leafs, I think you should still have hope for Western civilization.
Okay. Tell me.
I don't
encourage me.
Yeah.
Inspire me, Michael.
Build us up here.
Look, do you guys know who Steven Pinker is?
I know that name.
It's-
Oh yeah.
He's a professor, and
He wrote that book recently about Western civilization.
Yeah, like
and,
look,
and the Enlightenment.
when I'm having a really bad day, I remember a few fundamental truths. People are healthier than they have ever been in human history.
Right.
Yeah.
People are wealthier than they have ever been in
true.
human history. Fewer people die as a result of violence than ever before in human history. We are better educated than we ever have been in human history. Yes, we are more interconnected than we ever have been in human history, and sometimes that leads us to believe things are perhaps not as good as they are. But it is okay to be an optimist unless you're a Leafs fan. In which case,
Yes.
So you're telling me the Leafs
have to
success
protect your health.
is not a bellwether
mental
for the entire world's survival?
Thankfully, no. Somebody not that long ago pointed out to me that the Toronto Maple Leafs have never actually won what we consider to now be a proper playoff run, because the last time they won a cup,
Okay.
Those are
here's-
technicalities. Okay.
No, this is
Technicalities.
This is hilarious. I listened to a Leafs podcast, and this guy named Steve Dangle, they introduced this stat, and he like lost his mind because he never knew this before. And he's like, he's written books about the Leafs, and it was the Leafs have never won a third round. In
That's
the
right.
playoffs.
Yes.
Yeah.
You
They've
have
never
to
won
win
a third
4
yeah.
rounds to win the
Yes.
Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
When they won this cup last time, there's only 2 rounds.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's what depression looks like. And you
Yeah.
saw Steve Dangle's face; it was really bad.
Yeah.
and that's why I'm a Senators fan.
Well, okay, we might get the Battle of
Yeah.
Ontario.
True. Yeah.
So, which would be
I will
quite fun.
literally be happy with any Canadian team winning. To be honest.
Yeah, look,
at
I
this
mean,
point.
that's like
to stick it to Gary Bettman. I
Yes.
need him to cry. I need
Yes.
to see him cry on
Yes.
TV.
93.
Yeah.
93 people. So, okay, back to my question.
Yeah.
And that's very good hope. I agree with that. I worry people are so numb because of all the negative news that they consume all the time. Like when I go on Twitter, it's
Yeah.
like I can't even like feel anything anymore because I just see so much bad popping into my feed. And there's less bad in the world overall, but I see more bad.
You need
Yeah.
to give people hope. You need to say, yes, it's bad, but we can fix it.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's where, we as part of Allies for a Strong Canada, we have this group that's called the Council of Allies. It's led by former Chief of the Defense Staff, General Rick Hillier. And it is,
God bless him.
God bless him, he is a trooper in every sense of the word.
Yeah.
But
Inspiring guy.
he is a beacon for people in that darkness, and all of the people who are part of the Council Allies are beacons. What they do is they take their prominence as Canadian icons and they say, yes, this is bad,
Yeah.
but you know what? If we work together and we stick together, we can change it.
Right.
And that I find that is what really seems to bring hope here in Canada is people who stand up and say, yeah, I know this is dark, but if we work together, if we stick together, if we come together and we advocate together,
Yeah.
Mhm.
we can actually change things for the better. And we got a lot of challenges in this country to overcome, and we got a lot of strife to deal with right now, but we are still blessed to be in a relatively safe, incredibly wealthy,
Affluent, yeah.
incredibly healthy, incredibly well-educated country. We have a lot of things going for us, and things are a bit chaotic right now.
Yeah.
And as smarter people than me have pointed out, a world order that has existed for sneaking up on 70 years now
Mm-hmm.
Give or take,
is kind of coming apart at the seams a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's not great, but if we keep our heads, perhaps we can help engineer whatever comes next
Yeah.
and ensure that even if the institutions that have been responsible for keeping things together don't continue to exist, new things come along that do. And that's where it becomes about really holding our values in our heads and our hearts and focusing on that.
Right. That's good. We should probably end there, Greg.
Yeah.
That was a pretty good.
That was very inspiring. I have nothing to build on.
The thing we have to finalize is how come you're a Senators fan?
Yeah. What the hell?
I live in Ottawa.
That's no
and-
excuse.
And I think more importantly,
He lives in Calgary.
Yeah.
I think more importantly,
Canada's team, John
I
Nicholas.
like winning.
Yeah. Well, they haven't been in the playoffs for the last 8 years.
I'm sorry. Remind me again how the Leafs have
We're the longest running playoff streak in
That's something.
the NHL right now.
Good for us.
Yeah. So since Boston got out this year, I
Yeah.
think it's 9 consecutive seasons, which is the longest streak.
Last time
So
the Leafs
So there,
won a
everyone.
Stanley Cup,
we
my
don't talk about
father
that.
was 17
We don't talk
years
about
old.
Bruno. That's
Yeah.
He'll be 75 this year. But don't worry, this is the year, folks.
It's
this
year.
You convinced me. I've changed my mind. This is the year. for the
We
Leafs.
got you.
Absolutely.
On that optimism.
better defense, better goaltending.
Yeah.
Austin Matthews may show up.
He could.
In the
Yeah.
playoff. He could
yeah.
show up in the playoffs. That'd be
knows?
great. You never know. Okay, well, let's end it there.
Thank you, Michael,
Hey, thanks for doing this.
for coming
My
on.
pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I really
Thanks for
enjoyed
giving
this.
some hope.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we need more hope in this nation right now and all over the world, especially our Jewish friends that are out there that are experiencing a lot of negativity and hate towards them just being who they are.
Yeah.
Show them some love. Let them know. Get on Instagram, get on X, get on Facebook, and just let your Jewish friends. If you want to know how, or if you need some help, come check out theallies.ca. But just let even if you don't know, even if you come from a small town, you don't know any Jews, let people know you're with them. That's what they need to hear right now because they feel scared and they feel alone.
It's good. So it's theallies.ca, right?
Theallies.ca.
So go to theallies.ca. Make sure to follow them on social media.
Get your pin.
Get your pin.
Get your pin. I got one.
It's on. They're
So,
great. They're
Okay.
great.
Well, Michael, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it, man. And yeah, don't go Senators because Leafs are going to win.
Yeah. Well, may the best team win.
May the best team win. It'll be a fun battle.